Hello everyone, you are watching a snippet of Countdown June 8, 2023. Today is Thursday. See the full version on Patreon. And thanks to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. And I'm moving on to the main thing. The White House has officially declared that the responsibility for the destruction of the Kakhovskaya hydroelectric power station lies with Russia. And I will start with an insider, which I ask you to convey to the leadership of the Ukrainian intelligence and the general staff of the armed forces of Ukraine. And, of course, all allies of Ukraine. This is very important and very urgent. Next, I will read out the text that was sent to me by an insider, a former counterintelligence officer of the General Staff of the USSR Ministry of Defense, and this message deserves trust and close attention. Quote, a group of specialists from the Ministry of Emergency Situations from Rostov, specializing in chemical weapons, is right now in Armyansk, in the Crimea. They calculate and prepare for the explosion the plant and, most importantly, the storage facilities of the Titan plant. It is the largest producer of titanium dioxide in Eastern Europe. There are large stocks of toxic environmental pollutants such as sulfur dioxide and chlorine. Sulfur dioxide, even in small quantities, getting into the environment during accidents, causes irritation of the skin, mucous membranes of the nose and eyes, and in severe cases, pulmonary edema and death. Acid rains will lead to the destruction of all life for many years for tens to hundreds of kilometers around, and if it enters the groundwater, the affected spot will grow in all directions from year to year, turning the fertile lands of the south of Ukraine and the resort Crimea into a lifeless desert. I'm not talking about the lethal effect of chlorine. Undermining the Kakhovka Dam will delay the offensive for 2 to 3 weeks and will make it possible to regroup the military forces of the Russians, without heavy losses, withdrawing them from the Kherson region. And this is more than 50,000 people. If the Kerch Bridge is not liquidated in the coming days, then these forces will most likely be withdrawn to the Crimea and make its liberation as difficult as possible. If you bring down the Kerch Bridge now, then the Rashists will be forced to withdraw these army corps towards the same Mariupol, and then towards Taganrog Rostov. The explosion on the Titan will most likely be carried out after the armed forces cross the Dnieper and approach Armyansk in order to inflict maximum damage to manpower by exposure to toxic substances and make it difficult for further mass use of military equipment without its decontamination. How ready the armed forces of Ukraine are in technical terms for such work right now is highly doubtful. This event of the Rashists can further complicate the offensive or even stop it until the moment of localization and elimination of the consequences of the next environmental disaster being prepared by the Rashists, which, in my opinion, will be much worse than the explosion of the Kakhovskaya hydroelectric power station and comparable to the Chernobyl disaster. This impact on the environment can negatively affect for decades, and it is impossible to calculate all the consequences now. End of quote. So, the strategy of scorched earth is accepted by the Kremlin for execution. They do not want to talk to Putin, and he will take revenge with his weapon of retaliation. In this case, chemical. And on the TV box, the maniacs are fantasizing about an attack on the Kiev reservoir. True, the head of Ukrhydroenergo, Igor Sirota, claims that such a terrorist attack is impossible at the moment.
Since it has already come to the destruction of a hydroelectric power station, in general, maybe it is worth taking a closer look at the beginning of this cascade. The Kiev hydroelectric power station. There is a beautiful reservoir, slightly higher than Kiev, in my opinion, kilometers of cubic water. I would think about it, but just to show, you see.
And what will we achieve?
I think we need to answer, for Shibikino. You need. I repeat once again, you need to go to the Kharkov region and they really live a completely peaceful life there. Put artillery and are simply engaged in the destruction of our border cities. Without any military installations, they simply destroy civilian infrastructure. Why should we, so to speak, be holier than the Pope? We only destroy military installations. We don't go to war with the people, and so on.
Become our patrons now and look further in this program. The counteroffensive, which the Rashists plan to nullify by blowing up the hydroelectric power station, failed to thwart. The invaders are panicking. They report on the offensive of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Orkhovsky direction and are preparing for the summer roast. Against the backdrop of recent events that seem to hint at the beginning of a whole series of man-made disasters planned by the Kremlin, the West is beginning to realize that perhaps it is time to intervene, before it's too late. Former head of NATO Anders Rasmussen said that a group of NATO member countries may decide to send their armed forces to help Ukraine if other members of the alliance do not give Kiev effective security guarantees at the upcoming summit in Vilnius in July. Patrushev again rushed to Minsk, either for consultations on the use of nuclear weapons supplied by Moscow, or to the bed of a green tuber, which is time to be buried. Putin's elites are tired of the war, but they don't want to oppose Putin. The best scenario, they see negotiations at the end of the year, as a result of which the situation would be frozen, which would allow Putin to declare a Pyrrhic victory with the retention of part of the annexed territories. And Putin himself is preparing for lifelong rule. But just in case, he postpones the direct line to late autumn, fearing an assassination attempt. And that is all. See the full version of the program on the Patreon resource. And thanks to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. I hugged everyone. See you tomorrow on Friday Live. Glory to Ukraine.